Why is it so hard for nonprofits, indigenous organizations, and municipalities to create affordable housing on their own? It isn't because of a lack of desire. It isn't because of land shortages. It isn't because banks have no money. It isn't because consultants and builders don't want the work. It isn't because people don't need homes. It is because of how housing is financed and how risk is handled. I'm Keith Wiebe Gordon. I am the co-founder of Anhart, a national nonprofit helping local nonprofits develop affordable housing from coast to coast to coast. What is so risky about developing affordable housing? Lenders are careful by design. Their job is to avoid risk. They want certainty. They want stable income. They want protection before and after a project is finished and occupied, what lenders call stabilization. Stabilization simply means a housing project is built, occupied, and operating in a predictable way. To feel safe, lenders require the owner's own money in the project, usually 20 to 30% of the total value. A lender will often require the buyer to provide this equity along with proof of stable income to make the payments. That is the first reason affordable housing is so hard to create. The risk is called the equity gap, the difference between what a project costs and what the nonprofit can contribute to the development. Equity gaps are not signs of weakness. Nonprofits, municipalities, and indigenous housing organizations exist to serve people, not to accumulate cash. But still, the gap is a risk, and lenders avoid risk like a cat avoids water. There is another layer of risk that lenders understand, but nonprofits often do not see. The risk that the property's value will be reduced simply because it is affordable housing. A newly built affordable home or rental building might look valuable on paper, but lenders are more focused on something called the debt service coverage ratio, whether the income is enough to safely pay the mortgage. Let me explain. Lenders look at the balance between three things: how much rent or sales income the project generates, how much it costs to operate the building, and how much it costs to service the debt. What is left after operating costs is called net operating income, or NOI, the money that pays the mortgage. When tenants need more support, health services, caseworkers, security, or higher maintenance, operating costs rise. A combination of low rent and added costs reduces the money left to pay the loan. So affordable homes and rental buildings that serve people with higher needs are actually harder to finance, even though they are more important. But there is still another layer of risk. Banks do not just lend to buildings, they lend to locations. Some parts of Canada are seen as safe places to invest. Others are not. Rural towns, small regional centers, inner-city neighborhoods, and areas that have been neglected or disinvested. Even when land is cheap and housing is badly needed, lenders see these places as risky because market values are lower, sales are uncertain, and future demand is harder to predict. So a home in a struggling neighborhood might cost less to build, but it is harder to finance. This is one of the cruel ironies of affordable housing. The places that need it most are often the places the financial system trusts the least. That means rural communities, indigenous territories, and older urban neighborhoods carry an extra layer of invisible risk before we even talk about equity gaps or operating costs. So, is it a fool's errand for a nonprofit to take the lead on the development of affordable housing? No, I don't think so. There is a tool that Anhart and like-minded organizations in Canada have been using successfully for decades. It is called patient capital. Here is the part many people do not realize. People with the financial ability to help fill those equity gaps live in every community. In Canada, they are called accredited investors, business owners, farmers, professionals, and retirees who have enough resources to legally invest in private projects. They are not distant financiers. They are local people. Many of them want to use part of their savings to pay forward their legacy and help their community, if the right tools exist. Those tools are called impact investment instruments. Anhart is a Canada-wide nonprofit that learned how to develop affordable housing using patient capital. Not in theory, but in practice, by working for many years as an operator, a developer, and a partner to communities. And we learned something important. When the right boundary conditions exist, towns and cities are remarkably smart. Local nonprofits know what their communities need, and communities already know people who care about them and have the capacity to invest. So we share what we have learned from coast to coast, not to take over local projects, but to help communities unlock what they already know how to do. Patient capital is not one thing. It is a family of financial tools designed for one purpose: to let communities move forward before the financial system feels safe. At its core, patient capital does three things. It fills the equity gap, it absorbs risk while a project becomes real, and it waits to be paid back until the project is stable. That is what makes it patient. Patient capital can be delivered in several ways. One way is community bonds. Local people invest their savings into a local housing project. They earn a modest return, and their money is tied to something they can see and care about. Another way is impact loans. Low interest, long-term loans that sit behind the bank. They reduce risk for the main lender and make the project possible. A third way is impact investing through a fund or limited partnership. This pools money from many investors and spreads it across many projects, so no one community or building carries all the risk. Different communities use different tools. What matters is not the form, it is the patience. Affordable housing does not become safe overnight. It becomes safer as land is assembled, zoning is approved, designs are completed, government funding is committed, people move in, and the building proves it can run well. Each step reduces risk. Each step increases value. Patient capital is the bridge that lets a project cross from an idea to a stable community asset. There are two main kinds of affordable housing. Affordable home ownership. Homes are built and sold to families at affordable prices. Patient capital is used during development and repaid when the homes are sold. Affordable rental housing. Buildings stay in nonprofit ownership. Patient capital is used during development and then remains in place for 5 to 10 years after people move in. It supports lower rents, higher services, and financial stability until long-term public financing can replace it. Both depend on patience, just in different ways. Patient capital is not unsecured charity. It is usually protected by registered mortgages, security in land and development rights, or diversification across many projects in a fund. That means the investment is backed by real assets. Returns are modest and steady. They come from rising project value, refinancing, and stable operations, not from pushing rents up or selling housing to the market. Investors are repaid when projects reach maturity. When buildings refinance, nonprofits take permanent financing, or homes are sold. The homes stay affordable, the community stays in control, and the capital is returned. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that you apply for patient capital like a grant. That is not how it works. Patient capital is built through relationships, one-on-one conversations, trusted referrals, and community networks. People invest because someone they trust introduces them to a purpose they believe in. Accredited investors live everywhere. They already support their communities through boards, donations, and volunteer work. Patient capital simply gives them a way to support their community with their savings as well as their time. Different organizations use different words for this: impact investing, catalytic capital, blended finance, community capital. But they all mean the same thing: money that is willing to wait while real social value is created. Top-down programs move slowly and cannot see local nuance. Patient capital moves when a community has land, a nonprofit has a plan, and a few people say, "I know someone who cares about this." That is how real housing gets built. If you would like to learn more about how Anhart helps communities structure these conversations so they are safe, legal, and respectful for everyone involved, we would be glad to continue the conversation.